Hello there, Algebra 2 students. This is Mr. Weber. I'm here one more time this week with some more practice with the unit circle. So that first lesson I know was a lot. The second lesson we talked about this week, I gave you some tips and tricks for learning the angles inside the unit circle. Today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for how to remember what those points are all along the outside. I want to remind you that this comes from pages 363 to 380 in your textbook. So if you have questions, please go there and look at it. So the second thing I want to remind you of is every point around that unit circle follows the same pattern. Okay, the x value of that point is the same thing as the cosine of the angle that it makes with the axis. The sine of the angle it makes with the x-axis is the y value. All right, so it's alphabetical. X comes before y, c comes before s, cosine refers to the x value, sine refers to the y value. Okay, that's going to be important. All right, so here's the unit circle as it is filled out. Okay, this is the official version. So remember, yesterday we focused on the angles on the inside, degrees and radians. Today we're going to focus on how do you remember all of those points on the outside. Okay, so to get you started, again, I'd recommend that you pause the recording, take out a blank unit circle, and try to fill it out as much as you can. You're not going to fill it all out correctly the first time. That's okay. It's called learning. It's going to take practice. You're going to have to do it more than one time. But with a little practice, you can do this because there is some patterns that you can follow to take you around. So try it right now on your own, and then when you're ready, we'll come in and I'll show you those tricks, and you can try it one more time. Okay, so here is a blank unit circle with all of those points taken away. So remember how I think about this. I always try to chunk information rather than trying to remember every single thing. So when I look at a blank unit circle, I'm going to start with the easiest things, which is the axis. So remember that the radius of a unit circle is 1. Okay, so if we are at the origin and we go straight to the right, that coordinate would be 1, 0. If we go straight up, it would be 0, 1. If we go straight to the left, it would be -1, 0. And if we go straight down, it would be 0, -1. That's the easy part to remember. Okay? All right, next. Everything else in this unit circle is a fraction with a denominator of 2. So I've already made my fractions on everything else. Watch. 1, 2, 3, boom. They're all 2's. You notice that before? Some of you are like, oh my gosh, I never noticed that. But everything in the unit circle has a denominator of 2. So that's easy. Don't think about it. Throw 2 in the bottom. All right, if you ever get an answer and 2 is not on the bottom, that's a problem. Okay, so here we go. Everything is a fraction over 2. So now all we got to do is figure out a way to remember what those coordinates are on top. And there's a couple different ways that you can do it, but the one that I love the most involves your left hand. Hopefully all of you have a left hand, and if you do, I want you to hold it up right now. Hopefully you have 5 fingers on that left hand. It looks something like this. Okay, if your thumb's not on the right, then you're holding up your right hand, not your left hand. Put up your other left hand. All right, so there's your left hand. All right, so what I want you to do is to take your left hand, I want you to kind of tilt it to the right so that it's kind of at an angle. And what I want is your thumb and your pinky to make like a 90-degree angle. And what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that the axis, the x-axis and the y-axis are going to go down directly on top of our pinky and our thumb. Okay? So remember, on this unit circle, 0 is the right, and the pinky would be our 90-degree angle. Those are the axis, the x-axis and the y-axis. Now, if you look, on the unit circle, we have 3 lines in the middle. And if you look at your left hand, now you have 3 fingers in the middle. All right, get ready. This is going to be amazing. Are you ready? We're going to let each of those 3 fingers represent one of the angles we need to find, which is our 30-degree angle, our 45-degree angle, and our 60-degree angle. Okay, are you ready? This is where it gets really crazy. All right, so if we want to find the coordinate of a 30-degree angle on the unit circle, all right, so what we're going to do is imagine that we're going to chop off our finger with 30 degrees. Ah! All right, so we've chopped it off. Now look at what happens. Look at what's left over. On top of that chopped off finger, I have 3 fingers. And on the bottom, I have 1 finger. Does everybody see that? I have 3 fingers on the top, 1 finger on the bottom. Well, guess what the coordinate is? Look at just the numerators. Square root of 3, 1. So the x value always is going to correspond to how many fingers you have on top of your cutoff finger. And the fingers on the bottom will always correspond to the sign or the y value. Let's go ahead and put that into our chart. Square root of 3 over 2, 1 over 2. All right, so now let's look at a 45-degree angle. So we got to chop off our middle finger. That's our 45-degree angle. Ah! All right, now look at what's left over. I have 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Well, guess what that coordinate is? Square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Every single answer is on your left hand. You don't have to memorize anything. You just got to know the trick. Okay? All right, we got one more angle to make. 60 degrees. We got to cut off that finger. Is he going to make that joke again? I hope not. Ah! All right, so what's left over? We have 1 on the top, and now we have 3 on the bottom. All right, so guess what our coordinate is? It's 1 over 2, comma, square root of 3 over 2. All right, so using your left hand, you get everything from the first quadrant, that positive quadrant, quadrant 1. And that's really all you need, because everything else just repeats. Watch this. We're going to work our way around the circle. All right, look at 60 degrees. We're going to take that angle at the top, and we're going to go straight across. Look, it's exactly the same. Did you ever notice that? Go take out your official unit circle and look. It's exactly the same. All right, the coordinates, the values are exactly the same. The x value and the y values are exactly the same. 45-degree angles are always exactly the same. The next angle, exactly the same. Okay, so, and once you do that, watch. We can keep going. What happens is the values that are closest to the axis, either the x or the y, are always going to be exactly the same. The middle one's exactly the same, and the farthest one's always exactly the same. So look, if I know that one, I know that one. The middle one's always the same. And the last one's always the ones that are farthest apart are always the same. So the ones that are closest together are always the same, the middle ones are always the same, and the ones that are farthest apart are always the same. And you can keep going around the circle. Closest ones are always the same, middle values are always the same, last values are always the same. And if I were to keep going around the circle, look, it'd be exactly the same. Middle ones are always the same, middle ones are always the same, the last values are always the same. Pretty cool, huh? All you needed was a left hand. Some people use another trick to remember this. They call it the 1, 2, 3 trick. Because remember, everything is a denominator of 2, right? So if you look at your x values, one, square root of 2, square root of 3. So some people use this 1 square root of 2 square root of 3 trick. So remember, this is easy as 1, 2, 3. And to find the other one, it's just the opposite order. So you start at 1 again, and you work your way back up. 1, 2, 3. The key is once you get that first quadrant, everything else copies over. So you really only have to remember those 3 points. And if you remember those 3 points, you can copy them over to every single angle in the unit circle. Okay? Pretty crazy, huh? And kind of impressive. I mean, hopefully by the end of next week, you're sitting down and showing somebody, hey, check this out. And then boom, they're going to think you're so stinking smart, which you are. But here we go. The last thing we got to do, we're not quite done yet. We got to change our sign. So remember, these numbers are the same, but because we're at a different place in the unit circle, because we're in a different quadrant, the x value and the y value may be positive and it may be negative. All right, so We always start in the first quadrant. That's easy. Positive, positive. Don't touch it. It's perfect. All right. If I move to the second quadrant, what happens? The x value becomes negative. So go to your points and just make all your x values negative. Boom. Negative, negative, negative. Done and done. If I move to the third quadrant, remember everything's negative in the third quadrant. Both x and y are negative. That's easy. Just make everything negative. Negative, negative. Boom, 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 boom. Everything's negative. I don't like that quadrant. It's looking a little garnet and goldish. It's just not feeling, I'm not feeling it. All right, so let's go to that last quadrant, number 4. Remember in there the x is positive, the y is negative. So just make all of your y values negative and boom, you're done. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I'd recommend you pause it right now and take out a blank unit circle and practice, 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 practice. There's no way to get good at this unless you practice. Okay, all right. Feel free to stop, go back and watch this again. It sometimes takes 2 or 3 times. Remember, if we were in the classroom, I would start every day by showing you these tricks. All right, so it's very, very possible you can't just watch this video once and you have it. You might have to go back and watch these videos 2, 3, 4 times. Not the whole thing, just that first part that gets you whatever you need. Because that's what I'd be doing in the class. I'd be making you practice this every single day, first 5 minutes, last 5 minutes, from memory, give me all you can. Until we could get it all right, just like Factor Friday. All right, here we go. Well, there's the answer. That's not good. All right, so here's some questions from your homework. I want to go ahead and make sure we understand what's going on. So here we have cosine of 540. This is number 8. Remember, this angle is too big. It's bigger than 360. So I got to find a coterminal angle. So I'm going to subtract 360 from that value. 540 minus 360 is 180. So I go to 180. That's the pi. I'm looking for cosine. Cosine is the x, and that's why my answer is -1. Okay. Hopefully by day 3 today, that's pretty straightforward. All right. Now, some of these are going to look a little weird, so I want to walk you through a couple of them. Okay. So here's number 9. Again, why am I throwing the answer up? Weber, what are you doing? All right, so this one looks weird. Don't worry about the answer right now. Let's talk about why that is the answer. So the question is sine squared of pi over 6. All right, that sine squared is going to be kind of tricky. You might think, I don't know how to do that. You really do. So start first by just thinking, what is sine of pi over 6 by itself? Okay, so find pi over 6. There it is. What is sine? Sine's the y value. That's 1/2. So sine of pi over 6 is 1 over 2. So to find sine squared, it's just sine times sine, or 1/2 times 1/2, and that's why the answer is 1/4. Okay, so the second half of this lesson, they throw some different operations there to you, but you can do it. Just apply that operation. Figure out what each piece is on its own, and then if it's addition, add. If it's multiplication, multiply. If it's division, divide, and you're done. All right, so number 14 is a great example. This looks confusing when you just look at it. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do that. Sine of 30 over the cosine of 30. Okay, well first, find out what is the sine of 30. All right, so 30 degrees, there we are. Sine is our y value, so it's 1/2. Weren't we just at this angle? Yeah, I probably should have picked a different one. This one looked hard. And it equals 1/2. All right, so now let's do cosine by itself. It's the same angle, it's still 30 degrees, so I'm in the same place. All right, but now that I'm looking at cosine, I'm looking at the x value. So that's square root of 3 over 2. All right, so what I need to do now is take the sine and divide it by the cosine. I'm going to take 1/2 and divide it by the square root of 3 over 2. That's a fraction over a fraction. That's crazy. All right, but remember how we do that. Keep, change, flip. Okay, so you're keeping this first sign the same. You're changing it from division to multiplication, and you're going to flip the second fraction. So now square root of 3 is on the bottom, 2 is on the top, and we can multiply straight across. Well, notice what's going to happen. we're going to get 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. They are going to cancel. And we're left with 1 over the square root of 3. You're thinking, great, I'm done. Technically not, because we don't like to ever have a radical in the bottom. So what do? We just multiply the top and the bottom by whatever that radical is. And that would give us the square root of 3 on top and the square root of 9 on the bottom. Square root of 9 is 3. So our answer is the square root of 3 over 3. Ta-da! That was a lot. If you could do that one, I think you could do any problem on this page, because that was a doozy. Okay, here we go. All right, number 17. I'm going to do a couple of these at the bottom because I think that you might be a little confused by it. So number 17 says, what is the point of intersection of the terminal side of 5 pi over 2 with the unit circle? Okay, so I'm going to do this one by kind of freehand. So let's think about real quick what we know about initial sides and terminal sides. I can find my, there we go. All right, so here's our general axis here. And we have a unit circle in the middle here. I know, my artistic ability with the mouse is off the charts, right? That's what I thought too. All right, so our initial side is always on the positive x-axis. Now we got to find out where the terminal side is. Where's this going to land? 5 pi over 2 is more than 1 rotation. All right, so what we have to do is subtract 1 rotation. We have to subtract 2 pi. Okay, but we can't do that because 2 pi over 1 and 2 aren't the same denominators, so I can't do that. I have to change this. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 2, which means instead of doing 2 pi over 1, now I have 4 pi over 2. 4 divided by 2, still 2, still the same thing. So what am I going to get? 5 minus 4 is 1 pi over 2, which means I am at this angle right here. So that goes straight up. There's my terminal side. All right, that green is the terminal side. Terminal just means ending side. All right, so what's the point of intersection? What is it I'm actually trying to find? Well, I'm actually trying to find this point right here. And what is that point? 0, 1. Done and done. All right, these word problems are a little tricky, but hopefully you see that when you see what they're asking, it's not a difficult question. It just looks very difficult with the way that they're asking it. Okay, let's try one more. All right, what is the cosine of the angle in quadrant 2 whose sine is 1/2? Another great example of they're just asking this in a weird way. All right, so what you have to do is decode this question. All right, cosine, what is that referring to? Remember, cosine is always the x value. All right, so reread this with this change and it will make a lot more sense. All right, so remember, cosine is our x value, sine is our y value. Mr. Weber, you're so good at writing with a mouse. I know, it takes years of experience. One day, you too could be this good. All right, so reread it with those words replaced, and it's going to make a lot more sense. What is the x value of an angle in quadrant 2 whose y value is 1/2? Well, let's go to quadrant 2. All right, that's over here. So I'm looking at only these 3 angles here. It's somewhere over here. All right, now where's the sine 1 over 2? Sine refers to the y value. Where's the y value 1/2? Oh, it's right here. What is the angle of the cosine? What's cosine? The x value. What is the x value of the angle in quadrant 2 whose y value is 1/2? Well, the x value would be negative square root of 3 over 2. There's the x value. Done and done. Does that make sense? Figure out what they're asking about. Where are they on the circle? All right, you got to figure out where you are, and then you got to figure out what are they asking about. And if you can break it down in those 2 questions, it's going to be easy peasy. Okay, where are you on the circle and what are they trying to find? All right. Hopefully this was a good step through. If you have any questions, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to your teachers. We are here for you, even in this virtual world. So ask away, and we're there to help you out. Okay? Good luck. Have a great day.